Once upon a time, a king found himself lost in a forest. Try as he might, he could not find his way out. As he was wandering down yet another path, which had turned out to be as hopeless as the rest, a man with a long gray beard came toward him. The stranger said, "I will show you the way out if you promise that you will give me in 1 year the first thing that comes out of your house." "It's my sporting dog who greets me first at the door," thought the king. "I wouldn't want to give up my dog. Still, the welfare of my kingdom depends on me, and I must find my way home." He turned to the stranger. "Very well. I accept your terms." Scarcely had he uttered the words than he found himself at the great gates of his palace. Out rushed the nurse holding the royal baby, who stretched his arms to his father. The king, horrified, shrank back and ordered the nurse to take the baby back in the palace at once. When the king was able to consider the best way of handling the situation, he exchanged his baby, a beautiful baby boy, for the infant daughter of a peasant. And the prince lived roughly as the son of poor people, while the little peasant girl slept in a golden cradle under silken sheets. At the end of a year, the stranger arrived to claim his property and took away the little girl, believing her to be the true child of the king. The king was so delighted with the success of his plan that he gave splendid presents to the foster parents of his son so that they might lack for nothing. But he did not dare bring back the baby, his true son, lest the trick should be found out. The peasants were contented with this arrangement, which gave them food and money in abundance. By and by, the boy grew big and tall and seemed to lead a happy life in the home of his foster parents, the peasant couple. But a shadow hung over him which really poisoned most of his pleasure, and that was the thought of the poor innocent girl who had suffered in his stead, for his foster parents had told him in secret the story of his royal birth and how he was switched as an infant with the peasant girl. The prince determined that when he grew old enough, he would travel all over the world, if that's what it took, until he had found her and set her free. To become king at the cost of a maiden's life was too heavy a price to pay. So one day, wearing his usual peasant garb, he threw a sack of peas on his back and marched straight into the forest where, 18 years before his father had lost himself. After he had walked some way, he began to cry loudly. "Oh, dear me, how unlucky I am! Is there no one to show me the way out of the wood?" Then appeared a strange man with a long gray beard and a leather bag hanging from his girdle. He nodded cheerfully to the young man and said, "I know this place well and can lead you out of it, if you will promise me a good reward." "What can a beggar such as I promise anyone?" answered the prince. "Why not enter my service? I need a sharp fellow in the house, and you please me well enough." "Why not indeed, if we can strike a bargain?" said the other. "For a peasant such as I, it is the same whomever I serve. What wages will you give me?" "Every day fresh food, meat twice a week, butter and vegetables, your summer and winter clothes, and a portion of land for your own use," replied the stranger. "I can be satisfied with that," said the youth. "I will go with you." The old fellow spun, round like a top, and then set out with his companion, chattering so fast that he never noticed that his new servant kept dropping peas out of the back of his sack. At night they slept under a fig tree, and when the sun rose they started on their way once more. About noon they came to a large stone, and here the old fellow stopped, looked carefully round, gave a sharp whistle, and stamped 3 times on the ground with his left foot. Suddenly there appeared under the stone a secret door, which led to what looked like the mouth of a cave. The old fellow seized the youth by the arm and said gruffly, "Follow me." Thick darkness surrounded them, yet it seemed to the prince as if their path led into still darker depths. The old graybeard uttered no word. When they had climbed a hill which lay before them, the prince saw in the distance the house of his master. Now the master said with a frown, Watch carefully our ways in the house, and beware of making any mistake. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. Obey without questions. If you care to keep your head, never speak unless you are spoken to." When the prince stepped over the threshold of the master's house, he caught sight of a maiden of wonderful beauty, with brown eyes and fair curly hair. "What a treasure so deep under the earth," the young man said to himself, and he watched her lay the table, bring in the food, and take her seat by the fire as if she never noticed that a strange man was present. After supper that night, the old man said to the prince, "Tomorrow you may rest from the journey, but the day after that you start work. The maid will show you your quarters." The prince thought that he had permission to speak, but his master turned on him with a face of thunder and shrieked, "You dog of a servant! If you disobey the laws of the house, you will soon find yourself a head shorter. Hold your tongue and don't forget it." The girl made a sign for him to follow her, and throwing open a door, nodded for him to go in. "It is impossible that she is his daughter," he said to himself, "for she has a kind heart. I am quite sure she must be the very girl who was brought here instead of me, so I am bound to try to bring her back." He got into bed, but it was long before he fell asleep, and even then his dreams gave him no rest. When he woke, his first thoughts were for the girl, whom he found hard at work. To lighten her load, he drew water from the well, carried it to the house, kindled the fire under the iron pot, and in general did everything that came to his head that could be of any use to her. Breakfast, dinner, and supper were as delicious as before. The prince would have been quite content with his quarters, had it not been for the difficulty of keeping silence in the presence of the maiden. That evening, he went to receive his orders for the following morning. After he received his orders, the prince was going to open his door to retire when the maiden glided past and whispered in his ear, "What task has he set you for tomorrow?" "It is really nothing at all," answered the prince. "Just to cut hay for the horse and to clean out his stall." "Oh, luckless being," sighed the girl. "How will you ever get through with it? The white horse, who is our master's grandmother, is always hungry. It takes 20 men always mowing to keep her in food for one.